Hey y'all, and welcome back. My name is Elizabeth and I am so happy to have you here. So let's get to moving on some corn, some summer sweet corn that we picked up. I buy every year from a local farm near us, and we spend a day shucking it and then preserving it. Last year we froze it all, so we blanched it and froze some of it in half cobs, and then some of it we cut completely off the cob. That kind of showed me last year how we like to eat it, and we like a few cobs, but normally just fresh in the summer, and then the rest we like to eat not on the cob. We can add it to things like salads, or just have a quick side of it, or throw it into casseroles when it's already off the cob. And then I find that eating it on the cob is something that we really only like to do when it is fresh in the summer. So this year we are opting for canning some. We got a new canner. This is a Presto digital canner, I think. It does water bath and it does pressure canning. Pressure canning is new to us. Well, it's new to me. It is old to my mom. She did pressure canning growing up. They had a farm that she grew up on, and she pressure canned, but she has not for many, many years, because she actually had one blow up in her face, which is very dangerous, and thankfully she was not, too severely injured. Ever since then, it is not something she has been interested in until we found this Presto digital canner, which is very similar to an Instant Pot, which we both use. So I guess maybe the electric digital, kind of side to that is where we feel more comfortable. But for that, we just filled our jars up with the corn up to the first line. We packed that corn in and then filled to the same line with water, wiped everything with vinegar, put our lids on, and then let the canner do its little run for, I believe it was 85 minutes for quarts. And that canner kind of goes through the whole process and has a system that it does. So that is pretty cool. This was 4th of July week, so I'm making all of the treats. We're gonna prep some ice cream. We love homemade ice cream. It's one of our favorite things to make, especially now that we have milk goats. And so we're using our own farm fresh raw goat's milk here, which of course I'm heating it on the stove so it's no longer raw, but that's okay. My favorite recipe for ice cream, I'm gonna read it to you. It's a good one. It is 3 cups of milk and 3 cups of cream. Now for this, I just used all straight goat's milk. It's naturally homogenized. You can skim the cream off if you let it sit, but you don't get a ton when you do that because it's naturally homogenized. So I just threw it all in. If I do this with store-bought milk, I do 3 cups of whole milk, 3 cups of heavy cream. That is the perfect amount. I heat that up on the stove, the milk, the cream, and then half of the sugar. And I get that till it's steaming. And in another bowl, I add in the egg yolks or the eggs. You could do 8 egg yolks or 4 eggs. Sometimes I do more, sometimes I do less, depending on what I have. But within that range is good. I add the eggs or the egg yolks and the rest of the sugar, and I just beat that until it starts to lighten in color. Then, once we are at that point, I'm going to temper the eggs. So I add small amounts of the milk, maybe like 1/4 cup at a time, very small amounts, and mix until I get about half the mixture in there, and then I add it all back into the saucepan. That just tempers the eggs. And we're going to heat that up, stirring it constantly until it's good and hot. And then once it is thickened some, you don't want to boil it, but once you get almost to that point and it's thickened, you add in a pinch of salt and your vanilla, if you're going to add that, which is just, like I said, a pinch of salt. And I like to do 2 tablespoons of vanilla, and you take that off the heat. Then you're going to cool that down, so that needs to chill until it is nice and cold. Add it to your machine for maybe 20 to 30 minutes, and then put it into some kind of pan or container so that it can go into the freezer to finish. Next up on the agenda here is decorating this little country house for 4th of July. I have been, with 2 kids now, decorating less for holidays. I just like to add touches when I get them. We go to the antique shop, I'll bring home, you know, vases or whatever and add them in then, rather than necessarily decorating for certain holidays. But I still do like to add little touches. I grabbed some American flags, just some small ones to put in my sunflower jars. I had grabbed a few new things at the antique shop. This little chicken, red and white chicken towel for the kitchen. And I added that to my sink. I added a little red and white dish towel to the stove. And then this is actually a tablecloth. Funny enough, it is a red and white gingham with tassels on the side tablecloth that I was like, hey, that could add some red and white to my blue couch. And so it also has little roosters all over it, and I'll show you here in a minute. But I went and grabbed a little tan pillow to throw with it on the couch, and I have my white lace, so that just adds a little festive touch for the holiday. We're going to get back into the kitchen now, and you want to know what I'm going to make? We are going to make some refrigerator sweet pickles. This is a couple of days before 4th of July, so I wanted to have these in the fridge in time for burgers and hot dogs. You got to have pickles with it, and so that's what we were making. I bought these from one of my favorite little farm stands in a neighboring town, and just for this purpose. This was the whole point of buying these, which our garden is starting to produce now. So I'll be making a lot of these pickles because we prefer these over canned, and with our own farm fresh cucumbers. But we're just slicing these. I like to do about 2 pounds, which is anywhere from 4 to 6 pickling cucumbers. So I slice those up. You could slice them however you want. I chose to do the little rounds or chips. And then I like to add onion, and next time I'm going to try garlic, but I can't imagine it being bad. So maybe an onion. This was a big onion, so I think I only did half. But 1 normal size onion, and then maybe half a bulb of garlic. Pack that all in. Then we're going to start our brine. So for the brine, I do 2 cups of white vinegar, a cup of water, 3 cups of brown sugar. I just used up whatever I had. And then 2 tablespoons of salt. Now you can adjust the salt to your liking because they may be too salty for you or not salty enough. So taste them and see. You can always add a little bit more salt to it. Then I like to add a handful of whole peppercorn, maybe a 1/4 cup. Pour that brine over the top and then give it a good shake and let it sit in the fridge for at least 24 hours. I tried these the next day and they were pretty good, but the longer we let them sit, the better. But these do not last more than a couple days if I share with my parents. My husband doesn't like pickles, and my kids, I have a baby who will eat anything at this point, but my toddler will not eat pickles. But my parents do, and so we live on the same property farm, and so I take them over there, and they are gone in days. Just a few days, and they are absolutely gone. I ran over and got some of our farm fresh eggs from our laying hens and filled up my basket. I love to keep a pretty basket full of eggs. It adds that farmhouse charm without having to, you know, go buy something or do anything crazy. We just leave our eggs out. It's functional. They get cooked more that way. because they are out in the open and in a cute little basket. Next up on our list is our hamburger and hot dog buns. Now, y'all know I'm a bread baker. I love to bake bread. I sell it locally, and so if we're doing hot dogs and hamburgers, I'm going to be making the bun. So that's what we did. This is my normal recipe. I've shared this a million times, but I will share it and share it and share it forever because it is such a good recipe. And every time I share it, everybody's always asking for the recipe, even if I've shared it 20 times before. So this is 1.5 cups of milk or buttermilk. I prefer buttermilk, and sometimes I use my homemade buttermilk from our goat's milk. But milk or buttermilk, 1/2 cup of melted butter, 2 eggs, 1/2 cup of sugar, 4 teaspoons of yeast. Mix that all together. Then you're going to add in 5 to 6 cups of flour. I would start with 4 or 5 and then adjust from there once you mix it. But you're going to add that 4 to 5 cups of flour. And then right on top of that, you're going to add your salt. You don't want your salt to touch your yeast, so that's why we layer it that way. Get that mixed up and kneaded, and then see if you need to add more. You want it to be slightly sticky. You don't want it to be really solid and a stiffer dough. You want it to be slightly sticky. I usually only use 5 cups of flour. We're going to knead that and then let it rise for 1 to 2 hours in a warm place or until doubled. Y'all, I told y'all those pickles are good. I had to give them a little taste test. This was the next day, so I had to give them a little taste test. Also the next day, normally I try to do each recipe in its entirety for the video and then go on to the next, but the way this all worked with the holiday, I was prepping for a couple of days in advance. So this is the day before. I am getting that ice cream ready, pouring the mixture that I'd kept in the fridge while it chilled into the ice cream maker. I have this one. It is a 2-quart, so 1/2 gallon. Turn it on, dump it in, and let it do its thing, 20-30 minutes, and then put all that in the freezer to finish. We had a party to go to this night, 4th of July party, and we go to it most years. It's one of my husband's friend's family party, and so we go most of the time. But we didn't know if we were going to go this year with the kids, and so we ended up going. So at the last minute, I'm pulling together a buttermilk Coca-Cola cake, which is one of our very favorites. I make this all the time. I sell this one at the farmer's market when I go to the farmer's market, and it is just a crowd pleaser. It is a sheet cake, and you do a drizzle icing over the top, so it's very easy. There's no stacking of the cakes or anything, but for this, you add 2 sticks of butter and a cup of Coca-Cola to your pan and bring that to a boil. While that's coming to a boil, you add 2 cups of self-rising flour, 2 cups of sugar, and a 1/4 cup of cocoa to your bowl. Once your butter and Coke have come to a boil, you're going to dump that over the top of your flour mix, and then you're going to add in 2 eggs, a 1/4 cup of buttermilk, and a tablespoon of vanilla. Mix that all together and pour it into a 9x13 greased pan. You could do it in glass. On this day, I'm using like an aluminum throwaway pan because I was going to take it there and I didn't want to have to trail it back. Bake that at 350 degrees for 40 minutes. This is one of those old southern desserts, and we really love it. I make it quite often. This is probably one of my more made desserts besides any kind of pie. My husband's a big pie eater. He's not really a cake eater, and he's also more of a fruit eater where I love chocolate. And so this is one of my absolute favorites. just going with the flow. Like I said, we were prepping food, and so I'm just taking y'all along. I'll have a blog post linked that has the recipes and everything you need if you can't follow this for instruction. So, while we waited for our cake to bake, we are making watermelon popsicles. My daughter is so funny. She is obsessed with all kinds of fruit. She is a big fruit eater, but specifically strawberries and watermelon. Watermelon's kind of new this year. She liked it last year, but not as much as she has this year. Normally, she's my strawberry girl, but since strawberry season ended and it's summertime, we eat watermelon all summer. So this is actually the watermelon from our little summer party that we did in the last video. I took the watermelon that night, chopped it up, put it in the freezer in a freezer bag, and then we just blended it, and then I strained that out to get any big chunks of, you know, random seeds or the little white seeds or whatever out. I didn't actually use the blender. I used the food processor with a plastic attachment so it wouldn't just chop the seeds up. We strained that, added sugar. So I think this was 4 cups of watermelon juice once I strained it, and I always do for popsicles half the amount of sugar. So 4 cups of the watermelon juice and 2 cups of sugar, and then we added a tablespoon of lemon juice and a teaspoon of vanilla. Now, I don't have a popsicle mold, but I can promise you I'm getting one soon, because while this did work, it was not easy. I used one of my soap molds that I hadn't used for soap yet, and poured the popsicle mixture in, covered that with aluminum foil. We poked holes in that and stuck our popsicle sticks down in there. This ended up working out better than I expected it to, but transferring this to the freezer was a complete nightmare. The popsicle sticks all fell, and it was just crazy. So, use a popsicle mold. I will be ordering one as soon as possible. Back to the buns. They rose and doubled. We are going to pull them out, divide the dough into 16 pieces. What I did was 8 burger buns and 8 hot dog buns with this recipe. But you could do 16 of either one. You could do 8 and 8 like I did. Or you could just half this recipe and, you know, just get 8 of one of them. It's really preference. But we had people coming over, and we needed to feed more than just us, so I went ahead and made the full batch, and we had some left over that we used up for some other meals. Chop it into 16. For the hamburger buns, I roll it just like my rolls. I roll it one direction, roll it up the other, and then kind of create tension on the counter, on the surface there, using my silicone baking mat. And then I kind of flatten that out. By the time it rises, it puffs up to the right size. For our hot dog buns, though, I just roll those in my hand until they're the length of a hot dog bun. Set those out and they will rise. Now back to our icing. I know we're switching back and forth a lot here, but this is really how I prepared for 4th of July. For the icing for this, you just melt a stick of butter, 1/4 cup of cocoa powder, and 1/2 cup of Coca-Cola on your stove. Once that's melted down, you bring that back to a boil. Once it has started boiling, you pull it off, add a pound of powdered sugar, and a tablespoon of vanilla. And then just pour that over your cake. It will seep in. I like to make little fork marks, kind of like a poke cake in mine, just so that it seeps down into the cake. And you can top that with nuts or chocolate chips or candy, whatever you like. And there is your buttermilk Coca-Cola cake. Again, another dessert for our 4th of July at home. This was the gluten-free dessert I made. It is a blueberry crisp. We have been eating lots of crisps lately. I like to make cobblers or crisps or pies. I just pick one and go with it, but this is the easiest one to do gluten-free. And I've said this before, but my parents are gluten-free, and so this is the easiest one to do that way. So my berries were frozen, and so they were kind of chunky. I soaked them in water to kind of thaw them just a little bit, and then dump that out. If you're using fresh berries, you still want to get them wet. I did 6 cups of berries wet, whether they were fresh or frozen. Then you can choose a cup of flour or a tablespoon of cornstarch. This time I did cornstarch just so it was less gluten-free flour, because gluten-free flour is expensive. And a half a cup of sugar. Dump that over your berries and then just toss them in it really, really well. We add that to our 9 by 13 pan, and you could even do a little bit smaller of a pan if you want more blueberry fill-in, or you could double this in your pan. We add that to our pan. We're going to top it with a half a stick of butter cut into slices. Just put sliced butter all over the top of that. Then we're going to make our crumb topping. So this is a half a cup of brown sugar and half a cup of butter melted. Then you're going to add half a cup of flour. You can use all-purpose. I used a gluten-free flour here. And then a cup of oats. And you're going to pull that off the heat once the butter and brown sugar are melted together. Add your flour, your oats, and then a pinch of salt in there and give that a good mix. It'll be thick and kind of chunky in some places. In some parts it'll be thinner. But that is what makes it so delicious. You add all of this onto the top of that blueberry fill-in with butter on top and bake that at 375 for 40 to 45 minutes. You can pull it out a little bit earlier if you like yours softer on top. We like a really golden brown and almost a little bit crunchy crisp on top. And so I bake mine a little bit longer, more 45 minutes or 50 sometimes. I just like it to get nice and crispy. No pun intended. Now for those popsicles, I bought this just for these for this summer, for any popsicles over the summer, but I'm using it for other things in the house as well. But I bought this antique little pan to put ice and lay out the popsicles in, because I thought that would be fun to serve it in and get some cute pictures. And Isla really loved this little extra step of making it look pretty. She is her mama's girl and likes to make everything pretty. And so that's just what we did. So I pulled the popsicles out of this soap mold. Like I said, this turned out better than I expected it to once I started this process. But again, we'll be buying a popsicle mold for as much as my girl likes popsicles, and they're good for the baby, and everyone just loves them. But I pulled them out. I pulled all the popsicle sticks that had fallen off, and just sliced in between each popsicle stick. Now, why don't you come join us for a little 4th of July fun? I'm so glad to have you visiting here on our little country farm. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you again next week.